Hi, and welcome to this video, which is a continuation of one of my former videos, which I did on files in Java. So this is why we already see some code here. So in my last video, I talked about the file reader and how we could use that for reading text files. So in the last video, we were reading some lines and adding lines. So in this video, this is going to be pretty short. I'm going to talk about something that's called buffered reader. So with this file reader example, I actually used the scanner to read line by line. And a scanner is fine, but it is in some ways not as good as the buffered reader. One of the things is that scanner is not what we call thread safe. So we can have problems that if we have multiple threads running, they can both get into the scanner at the same time, and this will cause us problems. So the buffered reader is what we call thread safe. Another thing is that the buffered reader can enable us to change the size of the buffer. The scanner has a buffer, which is a fixed size, but in some cases we can get better performance by changing the buffer size and also maybe make it dependent on the amount of memory available. So in that case, the buffered reader is also better. The buffered reader has actually a larger default buffer size than the scanner as well. So it's in that regard, it's different. And also, one of the things that the scanner doesn't do is it actually hides the IO exception. So here, the file reader is the one that can actually cause this IO exception. So the scanner doesn't have the IO exception like the buffered reader does. Also in this video, I want to show you how we can use the try with resources, because this is an easier and better way to work with try-catch exceptions. So this is it. Also, last thing, the buffered reader is usually somewhat faster than the scanner because it only reads the data, whereas the scanner passes the data by default. But let's try to change this into using the buffered reader. So this is a quite complex one, add text at line, so we'll start with the simple ones. So here we have the file writer. So what we are doing is we're creating a new file writer here, and we're setting append to true so we don't overwrite. And then we append whatever text that we have. We append that and a line break, and then we close it. So if we were appending multiple lines like this, we would be, so in this case, it's pretty simple. We append all of the text we get here, but if we were to append it line by line, it would be pretty slow because the file writer will write each line, so it will do IO operations, whereas the buffered writer would actually save that buffer before actually writing the whole thing to minimize the amount of IO operations that it needed to do. So this is it. We can also see, yeah. And then we have one called print file contents, and this is reading the entire file. And this scanner next line, it will do some buffering, but it will read from the file reader for each line here. So let's try to change this into the buffered reader. So if we start by importing buffered reader, br equals new buffered reader. So we can see that the buffered reader actually needs some input here, and what we need is what it needs to buffer, and in this case we need it to be the file reader. So we kind of wrapped the file reader into a buffered reader because the buffered reader needs the file reader for accessing this. Then let's try to, maybe I should do this down here just so we can see how the scanner is used as well. So we have the buffered reader here. If we look at the buffered reader, we can see that we can get different things. There's something close. We can say something like lines. We can say read line, all of this stuff. So let's try to look at how we can actually make something work. So let's use the read line just like we did in the other example. So instead of using has next, we can use the read line. So what we'll do, we'll say string line, and then we will read the lines one by one. So we'll do like the other one, like a while loop for iterating, and then we would say buffered reader dot read line, and we want to read that line into the actual, like this, line equals, and of course we need to convert this. So we're going to check this read line will give us something back, and we can check if it's not null, like that. And this way, each loop, we will read the line into the string and check if it's null. If it's null, it means we ended the file. This is how it works. So then we need to add it to the string that we actually if we wanted to add it to some string that we wanted to return. In this case, we just want to print it, so we can just reuse actually this one, and instead of next line, we could just use here line, and that would actually be enough for this case. And we also need to close the buffered reader, of course. And we need to close the file reader as well, like that. And as I told you, the buffered reader will throw an IO exception, so we have to catch that. Or it can do an IO exception, so we have to catch that. So that, fortunately, I already have that here. Let's just outcomment the old one. So it looks a lot the same, but we should have some improvement. Let's try to run it. And it added a line here. We can see that it added, this is what it does in the main method. Print the file context, add a line, and print again. So we see it works as before. It prints the lines very well. So this is another way of doing file reading by using the buffered reader, and that enables us to read the file line by line. So the next thing I wanted to show you was how can we actually use the try with resources. One of the problems here is that it's not that easy working with files. Let me just delete the old stuff here to make it simpler. So it's not that easy working with files. For example, here, if we are reading and then at some point while doing the reading, we lose access to that file, it becomes write protected, or something weird is going on, there's an IO exception. What we do here is we just print the error. The problem with this approach is that what if we fail in the reading and then we get like one of these errors, we still need to close the file. So what we should be doing is we actually need to close the file. So if I put that down here, we get problems because these are defined in here, so we cannot close them here. So we kind of need to define them out here. Let me show you like that. And now we get a problem because it can actually, the IO exception, this close can also throw an IO exception. So what to do then? Because then I need to surround this with a try catch block as well. And that means that the closing itself can also give an exception. So, and this of course cannot fail. So this would actually be sufficient, right? So we check, we can have exceptions here, either down here, and also down here we also need to do the same thing. So we basically need to do like this as well. Or maybe we could make a finally block. But the point is, it gets pretty nasty with all of this exception handling here. So one of the cool things we should know is that a lot of things in Java is what we call auto-closable. It's really just, it's an interface. So we can look here. The buffered reader, for example, is actually implements the auto-closable. Let me see if I can, probably then the reader does, but it does implement auto-closable. So what that means is that we can wrap it into what we would call a, oh, we also need to catch, it can be already an exception here, so we need to wrap that as well. It gets really nasty. So what I want to show you is a much easier way to do this. So what we can do, we can use this try with resources, which is pretty simple. We can put anything in parentheses under try here that is using a resource that is auto-closable. So for example, I can take the file reader and I can put it in here, and that means that from now on, the file reader will only exist within the scope of these two here. It also means that all of this nasty stuff of handling IO exceptions on closing and all of that, it will be taken care of from the try catch block. So whenever it goes out of the try block, it will automatically try to close the file reader. It can be that it's already closed, so it will give another exception, but all of that stuff is already wrapped here, so it's a very good way of doing that. And if we put that here, we don't need to close the file reader, so I can remove that here, I can remove it here, like that. I can remove it here as well, and of course I can remove these two as well. So it gets a bit simpler like this. And of course, now the buffered reader doesn't know about the file reader. I can actually take that and put it inside of this parentheses as well, and then both of them will be automatically closed whenever we do that. We can either put that here or not. It's up to us. So this is try with resources, and it's really cool. So now this means that we don't need to close that one. We don't need to close this. We don't need to close this at all. Yeah. Yeah, so now whenever we get outside of the try block here, it will auto close. So this is much more nice, you can see that, than before. It's much easier to read, and it will handle most of the stuff going on in here. I'm giving a small warning here because the file not found exception is really an IO exception. So we can, if we want to, we can actually remove this part, and that will catch any exception. Maybe we would want something like that if we wanted to do a difference between the two, but this is it. So let's see if this still works as before. Maybe I'll just comment out that it adds to the file and just print the file contents. Let's look down here, and it works just like before. And the code is a lot easier to read, I think. Maybe even if we put this down here, it makes it even easier. The only thing is this looks a bit, but you'll get used to that. Okay, let's do the same for, let's go up, do the same thing up here. So, oh, I want to just add to file first. So this one, we can do the same thing. I'll copy the try block up here like that, and I can remove the file writer. Maybe let's change this into file writer. And of course we need to be like this. File path, and we also know that we need to add the append, otherwise it will overwrite the file each time. And of course we want to use the buffered writer. So I'll just put that here. Buffered writer, file writer. So now we can use the buffered writer for appending. Yeah. So with the buffered writer, what we can do is we can do something like in here. It works the same. Of course, we don't need to close any of them because they're in the try with resources block. So now that we are appending these, what will actually happen when you use the buffered writer? Before, the file writer would append the line to the file, and then it would wait, go through the loop again, and reconnect with the file, write the line, disconnect, reconnect, disconnect. So it would kind of do I/O operations all of the time. What the buffered writer does is it makes a buffer of the file, and it actually just saves this in memory. And whenever I close the buffered writer, it will write it to the file. There's also a command for doing it prematurely. So if we did something like this, it would actually be the same as the file writer. It would write to the file each and every append that we would do. The flush will just means write it to the file. If I don't flush it at any point of time, it will just try to save everything into memory with whatever the size of the buffer is. So also this becomes a lot easier with the try catch block, although we also added the buffered writer. We get some performance here, and we should see that it does the same thing. Let's just add to file, some buffered line. Let's see if it works. And we see it added it. So it works exactly the same way. And in this case, it might not be the best example, of course, because it's very simple and small and all of this stuff. Okay. So the last big thing to look at is add the text at line. So how do we do that? So let's try just to implement it exactly the same way, but we want to use the try with resources like before. We see in this one, we use the file reader, and we also use the file writer here, and we use something here called file input, where we actually read it line by line. So let's look into that. So first off, let's put the file reader part, let's put that in the try block with the buffered reader. So I put that up here. File reader, blah, blah, we can remove it from here. And then the buffered reader is here as well. So file input says file reader. We already put that up here, so we can remove that. We don't want to use the scanner anymore. And instead of the scanner, we can use the buffered reader. So we will use the same kind of reading as we did down here. Let's copy that. Remember the line. So instead of the scanner thing, so instead of scanner has next, we're using buffered reader read line to read the lines one by one. And then we adding this to this file input, which is really the new file that we want to write. So let's try to do somewhat the same thing. So we'll add the line to that. And we don't need, and also we add the line break to that. And we still need to do this because read line will eat the new line character. And then we check if count lines equals line number, we add that, and then we add count lines. That's kind of the same thing. Okay. That's it. So we'll remove this. And now we can, the file reader close. We don't need that because it's up here. Okay. So now we're going to append without the append true. So that will overwrite the file. So what we can do here is the file writer. We put that up here as well. And also we put buffered writer. And then the file writer in there. And we can remove it from here. And buffered writer append the file input, which is the, so that's it. So we put everything in here and everything will be automatically closed whenever we are done with adding the line. So, and also here we can remove the file not found. It will be cached here. So let's see if it actually works. So let's add it, change this and try to use this with new buffered write. Let's see if our file changes and put it into line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go for 5 and see if it works. We'll run. And doesn't really look like it worked because the weird new buffered write should be there. So we have some problem. Let's look into that. So what's really going on here? So one of the weird things is that if we run the file and I kind of change it just to add text at line, what it really does is it kind of removes everything from the file. So if I write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, save that, and then run it, kind of deletes everything. So what is really going on here? So the interesting thing is this is the line that actually writes something, but let's try to remove that line and put back all of these, save this, run the file, and it's still removed. So something weird is going on. Another thing that I tried just adding is the system out print line. So what we'll see is it doesn't even print anything, although it should. And what is really going on here? So the interesting thing here is this line here. So whenever we create the buffered writer or the file writer, when we are not using the append, then it will delete the file immediately before it starts out. So that means we need to split this into like a two-way thing. So what we can do is we can add another try catch block within this, or we can do it outside. I think we'll just try to do it inside. So I'll just copy the try block here and then add it down here, remove the file reader part, and then remove the file writer part from up here. Let's see. It says buffer reader. Oh yeah. Of course, yeah, then we need the catch part as well. Let's see. This one is for this one. Okay, so this is for this try block here. So we'll end that try block, and also we should be able to just remove this and move it down here like that. So that will catch both of them. So we only use the try block for resources here. So now we have our try block here. Let me just put this here. I think that will make it easier to see. So now we read the file into the buffered reader before we actually write anything. So let's see if that is better. So now here we have the file, and let's try to run. And now it actually prints it, meaning that it actually reads the lines. And let's see in here. Wow, we actually added the weird new buffered write. Let's try to see if we can move it into line number 2 instead. Let's look into the file. Yeah, okay, good enough. It's not line number 2, but that's because it's 0 based. So this is line 0, 1, 2, and then it adds it after. So it might be a bit confusing. So maybe we should look at that. So just briefly, the last thing I'll do is try to fix that. So we would say line number 2 is this one, right? So this is really line number 0, and this is line number 1. So we would think that it should be somewhere in between here. So here what we're doing, we're adding the file input here. So if I just move this down here, then it should add the line before actually adding it to the input. So let's see. Try to run it again, put it at line number 2. I'll just save this. It should be before number 3 here. Let's play again. That's it. It works as intended. So that's basically it for the buffered writer and buffered reader. You use it like this. You get your buffer, and you have to be careful with using buffered writer in the same line as the buffered reader when using this try resources, because you can get into problems that it actually deletes your entire file. So that's it for this video, and in one of the next videos I'm going to look into how to use the java.nio, not just the java.io, and how we can use streams and stuff like this. We can also do that with java.io, but I want to use NIO to show you how we can do things a bit easier, I think, for the next video. So, bye.